This is our
that I have, and the architects on the project are Schaefer, Zahner and Zahner, and that's Gary and Justin. They're primarily doing most of the work. We did an update for everybody in March. We are all sitting in all aspects of this project on the design side, somewhere between 80 and 90%. We're in a holding pattern there, and I'll tell y'all a little bit about that, tell y'all why we're in that holding pattern in just a few minutes. We have issued the contract to SB Contracting, and they are currently working on site doing the grading. They've been going for about 5 weeks, and their contract is scheduled for completion on November 20th, 2020. And our goal would be that we would get the design team ready to get the GC contract out. Whether we start in 12/2020 or 1/2021 would still yet to be determined. Our design right now still maintains the 8 ball fields that we talked about, plus the additional two at 250 feet, the others at 225. Support facilities for concessions, restrooms, tournament operations, parking lots, some green space area, and the T-ball area, which is located right here. So the design itself has stayed the same. We are in the process right now of, as I said, doing the grading plan. So these pictures are kind of taken from the reports that we're getting from Neil Schaefer over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Just kind of give y'all an idea. Early on, we were getting a little bit of rain, so we started a little bit muddy, but they've been blowing and going pretty good here the last couple of weeks. I was out there on Tuesday, was very pleased with SB's signage coming in and off the highway. We have one other access point within the industrial park. I went down Bluefield Road. You can see the site. There's a couple areas where they've cleared. You can look from Bluefield Road to see the site, but there's absolutely no access on Bluefield Road. To my knowledge, Alderman Sistrunk and I were talking the other day. We have not received any complaints from them on any of the construction that's been going on. So we feel like if it's been pretty quiet up to this point, it shouldn't get any worse impact on that neighborhood as we move forward.
And that's the only residential neighborhood that's going to be impacted by this, right?
And here's some other, just a couple other pictures. Neil Schaefer's out there on a weekly basis doing their weekly reports, getting back with us. Still doing a lot of kind of wrapping up the preliminary work, getting all of our silk fencing in place. And as you can see, they're starting to do some hauling and getting some things in on site. So when COVID-19 hit, we had just, as a matter of fact, it all kind of came to a head right when we were presenting at the end of March on kind of where we were at. So we were trying to make sure that the project as it stood was inside the $20 million price tag that the city had given us. And we were working on some value engineering, and we had laid out a couple different proposals to review with the administration to get us there. Based on COVID-19 and kind of where we stand right now, we've decided in conjunction with the administration that we would hold until July 20th. And the reason that we picked that date was to allow the city to get their tax information back for March and April, give y'all an opportunity to review it. At this point, you have issued a bond, and forgive me if my numbers, somewhere in the vicinity of 15 million. The determination would be made in July whether you go ahead and push that out to the 20 million or whether we stay at the 15 million.
Or somewhere in between.
Or somewhere in between. So what we didn't want to do was spend a lot of time in VEs and coming up with, hey, we can get you to this. We are far enough ahead in the process of design to be able to wait until July, take the information that we get at that point, whether we stay at 15 million or whether we bump it up to 20, or as Alderman Sistrunk just mentioned, go somewhere in between. I apologize, guys. I had not, this first time I've spoken with a mask. So we'll make that final determination. We'll have a little bit of time to prepare the final report to go out, our final plan to go out to the GC. And the goal would be that we would get out to the GC sometime in September-ish, maybe October, with those numbers, with that bid coming back in and being ready to execute it, depending on what we determine in July, whether that's December or January or February. And we'll talk through some of that in July too, if we need to give it an extra month or two before we actually start breaking ground on the true construction portion. Right before COVID-19, there were two items that were on the agenda for sports field lighting and turf. We pulled those. We were doing those outside of the GC's contract as a cost savings measure. Depending on what happens with the VE, those will be coming back to you. I would anticipate if we can get everything in July, those will probably be on your agenda sometime, hopefully in August, because we want that to be out and back in time to give us a little bit of feedback on the overall design. Lastly, just want to remind everybody, these funds are bonded against your special levy tax on food, beverage, and hotel accommodations, and they're restricted funds. So these aren't funds that we can use for personnel or other aspects of operations within the city. So that's a real quick update. From a design standpoint, we're in a little bit of a holding pattern. We're comfortable with that. The design team feels like we're where we need to be. We've actually been working a little bit ahead of ourselves through the entire project. And now we're just kind of see what the numbers tell us once we get an opportunity to review those. And I'm open for any questions that you might have.
Okay, all right. Alderman Carver, any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, all right. Alderman Sistrunk, any questions?
Thank you for the reminder that these are restricted funds.
No problem.
I've gotten that question, and I'm sure others have
There
too.
is a lot of times when you're dealing with bond funds, there's a lack of understanding that people see that dollar amount and say, hey, we can go, this will help us cover this or cover that. And, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, those are restricted funds. So.
Okay, Alderman Little, any questions of Mr. DeQuilla?
No, ma'am. Thank you, David.
Alderman Walker?
No, ma'am. Thank you, David.
Okay, all right. Alderman Beatty?
Just for, Mr. Quell, we've issued 15 million bonds so far.
We issued 14, we
14.
deposited 15, so.
Just what's drawn out there, what's just for the estimates on what we look at while we go.
Well, the entire project, if we did the full 10 fields, we have value engineered and got that to 19.6, 19.5, which was the number that we had talked with the administration, which is where they wanted us to be. So what happens now is if we're going to stay at 19.5, we button up our plans and we're pretty much ready to go. If we decide that we're going to reduce it a little bit, then we have to do some more value engineering. And I don't want to say exactly what would happen with that because it's hard to know until you start crunching the numbers. My guess would be off the first blush would be we would probably reduce from a 10-field complex down to an 8. I think that would be the first biggest cut that you could do and save a pretty good chunk of money.
Large chunk of money, yeah.
Thank you.
But we would obviously what we would do is try to look at where there's big cost savings and kind of work back.
All right. Thank you very much, David. I appreciate you being here and bringing us up to date. And then also we have Mr. Kemp here, who's going to give us the status of the work on the projects that he's got going on, and he's got a lot on his plate. So I told him he needs to be 10 minutes, but if he needed to go over a little bit to give us a full look, it'd be okay.
Okay. Mayor, I'll be brief as well. I think what the intent today is to kind of give you a quick update on some significant projects that y'all have helped and we've gotten started, but then specifically deal with two of the issues that's on the agenda going forward for next week as well. So what I thought I'd do is just kind of start, there we go. We're going to break this into two divisions. We're going to talk water division first, and then we'll talk about electric division second. These projects have all been in the budget. They're part of what we plan to do going forward. And then I'm going to start at the wastewater plant. If y'all remember, that was an issue that we've got a project started to alleviate the capacity issue at our lagoon. It's a sustainable solution. I think it's a great option. And as you can see right now, this is just a few slides that we're making great progress down through there. Right now, we don't see any issues with supply of some of our major equipment that's going to be shipped in here. And right now, we're looking for to be completed on the solids project by the fall of this year. And when we say complete, we'll actually be changing that and creating that product, which is basically a very good product that can be used as dirt or field work or something.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is this biosolid sludge, is this reintroduced into the environment, or is this more recycling?
After we through processing, it can actually be used as a Class A product. So there's no hazard, there's no problem. It can be used for field dirt, and we're actually working with Mississippi State to find solutions or ways that they can use it on site too. Because this is kind of a joint project for a regional piece, but that's right. A lot of people talk about it's got a lime content or something like that. But we will actually change all the sludge. It won't be going into the lagoon anymore. We run through a processor, greenhouses, drying it, and then we'll actually be able to haul it out with trucks. Really good.
And that takes us well into the future.
That's right. This solves that problem, and then eventually we'll maintain the lagoon for emergency backup. But for its use of what the lagoon is now, it kind of drops that drastically. And we're at capacity now, so this really gets the city in a good position for going forward.
Does this still have a marketable value? We just moving off site somewhere that'll take it. What's happening to it?
We've looked at it. Right now, if we can make arrangements to avoid trucking and, locally, and that's kind of Mississippi State's already identified needs that they have on campus. There's places here, maybe through the parks or whatever else, there may be some local usage for it here. There is a slight, some people actually do another add to it, bag it, but that's extra value, and we're not planning on doing that at this time. We want to get it up and running and go from there. Okay. While I'm at the wastewater plant, you'll also remember we had a kind of an issue at our oxidation ditches. We had some real old rotors that were failing. And so we approved and tied it to this project. It's about $1 million added on to that. And so we're putting new disc rotors in all of our oxidation ditches. All of that equipment is on site. We hope to have that in July, which is ahead of what we've committed to DEQ. So we're really excited about that one.
Mr. King, what's our capital spend? What's our expense out here with this need?
$8 million probably on our overall solids project, and we added another right at $1 million for the rotors. And you'll see right here that just so you'll know, those are where the greenhouses will be, the foundational greenhouses, so they'll actually come up, and your brick press machines will be on this end, and it feeds into it as a drying operation. I want to brag a little bit about this, and thank y'all for the support of this. This is kind of the start of a major effort to change the infrastructure, older infrastructure in the city. As you'll remember, we picked Pleasant Acres for a lot of reasons, but number one was it was probably where we were getting most calls from water and sewer. About 100 homes involved in that. So that's kind of where we started. That project dealt with water and sewer. We felt like that was a good start. Here's some examples of where we are today. All the infrastructure is in place. And we were talking earlier, since we've gotten the sewer and water, we've not had any calls associated with our equipment. So, it's accomplished, okay? We feel real good about it. And while we did that project too, we also, remember, we lowered it. So there was more than just a replacement in this neighborhood. And I say that because when we go to the next one, each area is a little bit different. But here's a product, and you'll see on the end, kind of up on the right, that's where they're putting the grass out. It goes out in kind of clumps. That's the way the professionals say you do it. You spread it out, and then we anticipate within a few months that's going to really spread. The contractor's still engaged, so we'll be monitoring this for another year to make sure everything's in place. But all we lack in Pleasant Acres right now is just a little bit of finish work and monitoring the grass to make sure we're back to where we promised. Okay. Great project. I think everybody's going to be pleased once we move on. As we said earlier, we wanted the second phase, which our next big project needed to be in Green Oaks. Green Oaks is a much larger project. It's got different situations. But one good thing about it is that the sewer collection system it's got plenty of capacity, and it's also at the right depth. So we have completed engineering, design, and study on the northern half, and what you're looking at is half of Green Oaks. And then, which is about 20,000 feet of sewer line. And what we want to do or propose to do, because of funding and a lot of other reasons, we're going to tackle this one a little bit different than we did Pleasant Acres. We're going to deal with sewer to begin with, and then we'll come back and do water later. And then we'll also deal with the south half of Green Oaks as well. It's broken into Contract A and Contract B, and that's more of a manageable standpoint, but also more aligned with what our budget is. Project A is where we would consider the current worst need, so we need to start. That's going to be heavily funded with Corps of Engineer money. So that's kind of where that's targeted on sewer as well. And that project is going to be probably about 1.3.
And what's your break road there? It's Douglas MacArthur?
Thank you. Douglas MacArthur, if you look at it, it's kind of the east-west line. So north of Douglas MacArthur, and then the A and B is separated by Meadowview.
Mr. Keenan, Corps of Engineer money, how does a neighborhood like Green Oaks, how does it qualify for, what are the qualifications for grant funding?
It was part of their funds, and we worked with them probably about 5 years ago. It started an initiative, and they're helping communities on collection systems. So that's what it was targeted, and we were very fortunate for the city to actually, they moved it up. Initially, we were going to be about 100. They moved that up to about 1.3. Of course, we've got to match it now. That's part of our budget.
What's our match, 50% on that, or what?
25.
Alderman Sistrunk had a question.
But it was under their initiative, under collection and sewer, and that's why it's just got to be used for that.
So that don't get it like on community development block grant stuff where you get in low mod stuff.
You said Douglas MacArthur, and I missed the name of the other street that you said was sort of a boundary street.
Meadowview.
Meadowview?
There's one over there, so, is
Okay.
that right?
Or Middle Lark?
It's right between, Cottonwood and,
Plum?
no, Plum's over there.
No, Plum goes,
Plum's in the back.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Can you pull it up? Can you enlarge it, Joel? I'm sorry, Matt. Middle Lark?
It might be Metal Lark, is it?
Metal
Lark.
Yeah, Daddy had.
I'm in the wrong neighborhood, aren't I?
You are.
We got your attention. All right, well, as long as we're at a point where people are asking questions, do we have any questions? Alderman Little, any question from you?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, Alderman Walker, any question from you?
No, ma'am. Just thank y'all for all the work. And I think both the waste and the water are moving absolutely in the right direction for the future of the city. So nice work.
Okay, and he's not done. I just thought I'd take a break there and give everybody questions. Go
Let me
ahead.
give you these parameters. That's where engineers, we're really trying to get it together, but that's just kind of an idea, and we'll stake it, and we'll be meeting with customers, assume y'all approve this going forward. The other thing on this one, we're gonna do the primary lining on this, whereas there was a lot of excavation. So how we rehabilitate that's gonna be a little different than we've done because since I said earlier, we're at the right elevation, the capacity is fine, with good cleaning, we feel like the majority of the line can be rehabbed with that liner in place. We've got a lot of the manholes that can be modified, but we still have several that may be replaced. So all of those are identified as part of the project. So a different approach, same result. When we get through, the neighborhood would probably still have a system that's good for another 70 years. I think that's where we stop on the water. I will say one thing too. Budget-wise, this is all in place. It's matched on where we are. We would hope that if we go forward now, get started this summer, we could probably do contract A and B by this time sometime in the summer of 21. So that kind of gives you an idea. Same contractor may do both. We may have two, but that's probably why we want to bid it this way.
And that's sewer only though, Terry.
And so we're only, and then we're still, once we get that started, we'd like to go and start doing detailed investigation on the south half and on Rolling Hills, because, this is not the end, it's continuing on. We've got a lot more work to do. So we need to get ahead of the construction phase. But I say that to say, the rates support this, and we've got some money set aside. The time's will be coming, I'd say, in the next 6 months. We're in a rate review study right now with Mississippi State to kind of really track our cost based on revenue and how we can maintain at least $1 million investment to the infrastructure. And so hopefully I'll be able to bring, to y'all a recommendation within the next 6 months of what we need to do with the rates in the spring.
Okay.
So I think there's going to be some movement. We'll need to talk about it on water and sewer. It's a little bit different on the electric side. That's some good equipment right there. I'm real proud of this project too on the electric side. Significant long-range plan, and this is going to bring that second feed in from TVA. We're spending about $8 million on the substation. That's really going to prepare Starkville for short-term, long-term, and I think have a significant positive impact on maintaining the reliability our customers need. We've got a great contractor here. I'm bragging on both contractors. I think we've been very fortunate. We're on plan right now for having this station energized by winter, as soon as TVA comes in. This project, as I said, about $8 million. The steel work, you see a lot of equipment sitting around. We'll have more equipment. All the major equipment's been ordered. They'll be delivered over the next 2 months. Steel will actually be coming out of the ground in the next 2 weeks. So you'll start really thinking this is truly a substation by then. So things are going really well. And the neighborhood, from all accounts, has been very supportive and
They're nice people.
Here's the other one that we talked about several months ago that I think is very important in the budget as well. It's kind of an effort to consolidate all of our operations into one location. Bill Whittle's here with me too as the architect and kind of help answer questions on how that works. If you remember, we did a bunch of studies to figure out optimizing and how we do that long term. And we settled on the site where our electric operation is now. That's kind of the project itself is in sections. You'll see the blue is kind of the existing building. We've added a war room, we've had additional space, with warehouse, which is more and more important on our water and our sewer side now than what we have now. And we've got ample capacity for storage of our trucks and equipment to protect that as well. That's about 10,000 of additional space if you look under view. We also took the opportunity to go inside and reconfigure some of the existing with the idea it's about improving communications, teamwork, and efficiency. kind of grouping everybody together. So that's kind of an internal view of all of that. And then that's the external view, to kind of give you a shot. We've worked real closely. I think Bill has been working with folks inside the group to incorporate things so that it complies with city aids. I will say the bricks made the number go up a little bit more than what we had earlier, but that's kind of where we are. Now is a good time to start the project. That's kind of something we'd like to go out for bids. Now when we do this, one thing I did want to go back and just show you. So we've rearranged our laydown yards. We have a landscaping. And so I think it's going to be a real nice site. But I think overall, from an operations standpoint, a huge benefit from us from being able to work and do what we need for the city. So.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Terry. One of the things, and I'm going to go around obviously and ask everybody if they have any questions for you, but one of the things I want to say about you guys and about the board is that I think one of the things this board is going to be known for is having looked so far into the future that we're going to be prepared for our long-term future for Starkville. From the wastewater standpoint and the water standpoint and the electric standpoint, we are poised for any growth that comes our way. And I think that's really one of those things that y'all can all be proud of, that you saw that and then supported that and voted in that way. So anyway, all right. Alderman Carver, any questions of Mr. Kemp?
I guess it's a dual question. As an elected official and for Mr. Kemp, do y'all have any lessons learned from Pleasant Acres, or any efficiencies and effectiveness you could have been improved on? Or
Lots of lessons learned. I can say that. And I say that because they did a really good job. Let me tell you from my perspective, and then I'll let Terry tell you from his, because obviously they would call City Hall. And a lot of what we did is we communicated and communicated and communicated. And that was a huge help. We used Facebook and Nextdoor and all those direct communication. I think they did a very, very good job. That we had, I can count 1, 2, 3, whose names I know very well, 4, I think, who really had problems and were not happy just because it went on for so long, and it went on for so long because of the weather. And there's, of course, nothing we can do about the weather as it relates to that. So I really think that they did a very good job and continue to do that and have circled back. Every time somebody came to me, we circle back to them to talk to them. Held 4 meetings, community-wide meetings or subdivision meetings. So anyway, Terry, from your perspective?
No, I think that's what we are taking to learn. I think there's 2 pieces, and break it into manageable areas. And I think getting started in spring right now is better than when we get pushed into the fall. It's kind of managing that part. The other one, we've had a lot of more pre-engineering on our staff, digging down into it. And the plans that will be going out right now are a little bit more detailed, simply because we've got more data. And I think that'll be the next lesson learned, is to do a lot of that. And then as we get into the south half and over in Rolling Hills, we need to start some of that investigation now, not wait till construction's over, because that takes time. And as the mayor said, it's a lot about communications and making sure our customers, they've kind of got an example at the end now, but realizing that rent-ups is going to be different. It's just making contact and realizing we're not going to walk away till we get it finished. And I said, we got a year, we still got that punch list that the mayor was talking about, so we're going to be there.
All right. Alderman Sistrom?
Nothing.
Okay. Alderman Little?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Alderman Walker, this is your ward, and you heard some of the same things I heard. Anything you'd like to add to any of that?
No, ma'am. I think that's true. I think what I heard is what y'all heard is the more complaints were just about finishing up and the longevity of the project. But I would say that I think there was good faith to try to communicate what those concerns were and try to get those hashed out, knowing that you're not going to completely satisfy every single person to where they want to be. But I think there was definitely good effort on the city and the Starkville Utilities part to do that. And I know this final phase, the finish up phase, while it's not the most important phase was making sure that the sewer line and the water lines work appropriately, but from the neighborhood's perspective, and for how this is going to move forward in the other neighborhoods, that finishing up piece and putting everything back and making sure we don't walk away before everybody is as close to satisfied as you can be is the really important part of this of making sure we do that. And I have all the confidence that Starkville Utilities is going to do that and hold the contractor accountable to make sure that that work gets done. And when we do that, I think there's every project you do, Terry and everyone else in the room will attest that there is lessons learned, and how do you move forward and try to make something better. So I have no doubt that the process will even be improved moving forward. But I'm very pleased for the citizens and the board's support in Pleasant Acres that we're going to have. While it is a small subdivision, we had major infrastructure challenges over there that were needed to be addressed. And the reality is it was done 70 or 80 years ago at a time when that part of the community was in the county. And to be clear, if it had a little dirt over the top of it and it rolled downhill, that was probably good enough. And so this position that we're in now is much, much better. And will put us in a position to move forward going as we go forward. The one question this is not so much a question, but a comment, and this is really about the new facility, combining the new buildings, which I'm in favor of. I would just say, Mr. Kemp, and for Jacob and whoever is going to be in Starkville Utilities, I think this board, and I'm sure that future boards will continue to look into the future and see where we need to go. There's, you got the rail line running right beside that. You got Mississippi State University, but then you're sort of sandwiched in between the Highway 12 bypass and the 182 corridor. As we move forward, whether or not there's ever the opportunity to tie in and have a rails with trails or a rails to trails or some other pathway, there's a real opportunity for that piece of property to function as a major bike and pedestrian link from that 182 corridor into what would ultimately be east of the bypass. And I would hope that as part of our planning, whether we can use that railroad or not, but that entry drive, I think is something that I want y'all to be contemplating, being able to allow bikes and pedestrians to move that. Don't want anybody to get next to your building, don't want anybody in your facility, but maintaining that as a drive that could potentially link through some other point is just a point of conversation that I want utilities to be thinking about, because that is such a critical link. I would get you over towards the North Farm South and would tie you into the downtown. And that's really a missing link, but also is a big part of property that's already city or Mississippi State owned. And so I just want to put that out there to be contemplating how that link could work with the additions to your facility.
Okay, thank you, Jay. I hadn't forgotten about that. I think I heard you mention that a while back, and I forgot to mention that again.
Say something to Alderman Walker's comment. We've actually talked a little bit about that. The operations center, we would say, from a security standpoint, from a lot of reasons, it does need to be kind of somewhat isolated and separated. But back on the backside along the railroad, I think there's going to be space that might be added if those days come in. So it doesn't prevent that. But I think when we're thinking, and if y'all see it differently, we were going to try to direct them around our operation site. That's more of a safety security, just on than coming basically through the site. Kind of
East or west side.
either way.
Okay. All right. As long as we're thinking about it, I think Alderman Walker's point is well taken. So, okay. Thank you. Alderman Beatty. Okay. All right. Then in that case, unless
I say one thing that I didn't.
Sure.
If we move forward and through things like Green Oaks and everywhere else, this I think is probably as good a time to get construction started as we're gonna have in a while. We would envision that combination of our warehouse. We would hope to have that completed within about a year. So we'll be looking, if things go good, depending on how the bids come back and everything on that order, we're teeing it up to maybe look for May, June of next year time frame. But that's kind of what we built in our budget. Is that right, Bill?
May I?
Yeah.
I think ideally, we would like to put this out for bids first week in June. It gives us an opportunity to get into DRC and architectural review for a couple of weeks, and then hopefully if there's comments, and I'm sure there will be, then we can address those and put it on the street. It's a 30-day process. Bids come in, works with the budget. And, I could see a notice to proceed by the end of July.
Okay, all right.
So I
Okay,
just want to give you another time frame of how this fits together going forward, if y'all want to do it.
okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's it.
All right, well, that concludes our presentation, so we will move into the agenda itself. And if there's anything in particular that anyone has any concerns about, please go ahead and speak up, and we'll put where we can things on consent. Mr. Latimer, we have 3 sets of minutes. Have you looked at them and you're good with them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and Ms. Harden, you're where you need to be with those? Anybody have an issue with putting those on consent? Okay, we have minutes available for consent. I don't have anything that I know of at this point in time from an announcement standpoint, although certainly something could happen. Anybody have anything they want listed on the agenda for under comments? Okay, we have no public appearances, and I thought we had a public hearing. We don't have a public hearing? Okay, we were skipping one, that's right, we're skipping one meeting. Okay, I'm sorry. Under mayor's business, we've got returning the parks workers from 32-hour to 40-hour week. We are opening up our parks, and as we do so, some of those requirements are becoming a little more stringent than a 32-hour week allows. I think Mr. DeQuilla has got it laid out so that we're picking up trash on Mondays and cutting the rest of the time. So we've got lots of cutting to do, as well as the maintenance that goes along with that. So that is the recommendation at this point in time, and that adds over the next 6 pay periods or so until that end of July timeframe about $16,000 approximately, I believe is correct. So that allows us to at least provide a minimum staff standard and staffing for our parks, which we certainly want to have them be the best that they can be within our budget constraints. So any issues with anyone in putting that one on consent?
I don't have an issue. I was going to ask Mr. David about, I fielded a few calls about youth sports, and I know it all hinges on the governor and the 20 and less outdoor recommendation, but if it were to be available, would y'all consider like softball? Is this stuff going to be an extended season or a late season?
Right, what we've already gone through, kind of run that exercise, and what we would do would be to reopen registration, because we had people that, when we were doing the refund, said, look, if we can't do it now, we're not gonna hop in until later in the summer or the fall. So we have got it targeted, not for a particular calendar time, but to either come back and run a shortened or a bridge season. We wouldn't have all-stars, obviously, and some of those types of things. And we've even talked about just the Sandlot League, where you register, you come out on any given night, your age group, you divide you into a team that night when you come out. Our goal is to do something. We just, again, kind of waiting to see where things go with the governor and making fit. Spoke with the soccer association this week with us reopening the soccer fields and everything too. They are in their off season right now. He said that they might do some tryouts, but they're still waiting for some guidance from the state, their state soccer association, on how they're going to even handle that aspect of their programming. So we have it on our radar. We're just kind of trying to figure out when that wind is going to hit. We'll start next week going into the fields. One of the things that had not happened up to this point was getting the grass out of the infield, dirt areas and that type of thing. We'll start that process this week, so that'll give us a head start. So when we are ready to do something, we should be able to pull the trigger.
Have all refunds been refunded from the baseball side? I've gotten a few calls on that.
To our knowledge, yes, they've all been processed. They've all gone through the credit card process and through the return check process. We have run into 1 or 2 people whose address changed or their information wasn't right on their address. We're still getting a random call periodically, but to my knowledge, for the most part, we've gotten everybody their money back.
Lisa, is that?
We processed checks May 1st, May 2nd in there, and got the checks in the mail.
Okay.
For the people who had paid cash or check, the ones that paid credit card, we just put it back on their credit card.
And it's a random, like I said, we'll get a random call periodically. Once we start tracing on it, it's usually, our information that we had was not full, or we didn't have everything we needed, or the address as well.
Okay, all right. Any issues with that? Okay, we'll show that one on consent. Then we have Ms. Harden being the certifying official for, and Joanna for the FEMA disaster funds. I think that's just a pro forma kind of thing. We have to have some contact person for that. Is that correct?
It gives FEMA the authority to talk to us.
Okay.
And with our recent Olga tropical storm, we found out it's almost a daily touch base with these people.
Okay, all right. So that ought to be more of a housekeeping issue. So that should be a good consent item unless I hear otherwise from anyone. And this next one is the first public hearing on the chart of the Unified Development Code to allow agriculture and forestry operations at a property zone for industrial uses. Okay, guys, this is going to fall under our special effort to be supportive of one of our fellow entities. The school district has a piece of property that they are trying to get timber cut on it. Chris, you can weigh in if I state this incorrectly. And as it stands under our new Unified Development Code, that piece of property does not allow for timber cutting. So in order to do that and to expedite it for them, and I say expedite it for them because there's apparently timber is volatile right now. The timber pricing is volatile right now, and they have a fairly large contract to get the timber cut. And if we delay too much, they'll lose that contract. So this is an effort to be flexible with our school district, bend but not break in terms of what we do. So we have advertised this. It was in the paper yesterday. The first point at which we can have a public hearing and take up the matter is our June meeting. And so that's what this is for, is calling for the first public hearing. Normally, as y'all all know, we have 2 public hearings, which I am very happy with because I think it's important for us to have 2 public hearings. But in this case, and it's not required by law, but in this case, this would allow us only to have 1, but to accommodate the school district. And so under this set of circumstances, I think this is worth doing. So Chris, anything else?
No, but just to be clear, the only action item for this Tuesday will be calling for that
Right.
public hearing.
Right, but I wanted to set the
Absolutely.
stage that we're doing something on behalf of the school district to benefit them for this particular contract because they have a good bit of money that might be coming to them by virtue of the timber deal. So that's where this stands. Alderman Carver.
Well, I understand that this is, a volatile timber market, and this is to help them for that piece of property. As far as amending our Unified Development Code, can it not be structured where we have to do it for each and every piece of property? I mean, I'm just afraid of, once with this motion passes after a couple of public hearings, is it any type of forestry operations and agriculture operations are allowed in industrial uses? It's not a case-by-case basis anymore?
No, it would apply to any industrial-based categoried land. That forestry and agriculture would apply on industrial zone land.
The school district wouldn't have to come before us anytime?
No,
That's correct.
And it was, Dr. Kim and Mr. Haviland both said that this was one of those things that probably was one of those tweaks that we should have done that we didn't catch. So this is not as though we're doing something that is in our long-term, not in our long-term best interest.
And it makes sense because in our current industrial park and the future one north of town, there's tons of forestry and agricultural land surrounding both of those areas.
Right.
So it just makes sense that people should be able to do that near industrial and on industrial land if it's not being used for industrial purpose.
Okay.
I mean, this 16th section land, school districts cut timber on all the time.
That's right.
We make exceptions in the city all the time for all kinds of stuff. And so this doesn't, to me, fall out of, the importance or the ordinary of what we grant exceptions for all the time on the use of additional use and exceptions and all kind of stuff for zoning inside city limits, Carl. Very much.
Well, and this let's be clear, this is actually not an exception. The exception we're making in this point is that we're not having 2 public hearings.
Right.
So, okay, all right, Alderman Sistrum. Alderman Little, any questions about this?
No, ma'am. Thank you. Pretty straightforward.
All right, Alderman Walker.
No, ma'am.
All right, anything further, Alderman Beatty? Okay. All right, and this is just calling for the first public hearing. So anyone have any issues with putting it on consent or you want to hold off? Consent is good? Okay. All right, the next thing we have is under board business, consideration of quotes for property, vehicle, and insurance services. We have been canceled by our provider, so we are now having to go out and get bids or quotes, on insurance. And this is, hopefully they'll come in on
Monday morning.
they'll come in Monday. So we won't have them until then, but this will be something for us to consider. So
Maybe why we canceled part of the COVID.
Because we had,
Lost frequency.
thank you, David, yes, Alderman Little,
All right.
who is our
Property
specialist.
Casualty side of property side,
Property.
building, so I mean.
No, I'm sorry.
Property casualty.
Rolling stock.
The automobile casualty
Yes,
claim.
yes. If you recall, we had fire that lost two of our garbage trucks, and then we had one garbage truck wreck, and we've had a number of police vehicles that have had issues. And David, since you're the expert on all this, would you like to carry us through that a little bit?
Well, obviously lost frequency is something that's looked at, but the size of the claims, and I've talked with Lisa Harden on this a couple of weeks back when I got word of what was coming. We're going to have to be more mindful and maybe have not report every claim. You know, obviously if there's an injury or something, but if we're going to have to set some sort of threshold on what the department's going to be, enabled to handle it from a budgetary standpoint. But every $1,200 or $1,800 claim does not need to be turned in, because this is what happens when you have multiple claims constantly on top of the big significant claims we already had. So yeah, we're just going to be mindful and set some sort of threshold internally. If it's $2,500 or $5,000 or what it's going to be, but we don't need to turn in every little pity pat claim.
And Alderman Little, what would you recommend for our deductible?
Oh,
5,000, 10,000?
and a lot of those vehicles, we've got some, like on the PD side, we've got some old Crown Vics that probably aren't worth a whole lot. And then we need to look at, do we even need to carry comp and collision on those? And if we had a loss, you're just going to eat it, but on the value of the car is not worth it, worth carrying it. So if we set a $5,000 deductible, it may be more than the car's even worth. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't even need to have that coverage on it. We just need to kind of look at, maybe review those closely, and I'd be happy to help on that too.
That'd be great. Okay.
May I ask?
All right. Thank you. Alderman Beatty.
Alderman Little, our policy is being canceled. This is our auto policy, our commercial auto policy for our fleet of vehicles, including our police vehicles and stuff. This is not, our property's not been canceled, is or what?
No, it's just
Is our property on PIP, an institutional property, on these PIP type policies or something, and we got a separate. This is all commercial vehicles, correct?
This is all the automobile side. That's all casualty,
Okay, all right. Who's our carrier on that?
used to
Through
be.
Renaissance, but what is it? What was it? Liberty? I can't recall.
Liberty.
What's the expiration date? Can't push that.
They extended us for a month to give us time, but it was June?
They initially said May 31st, and they've now extended it to June 30th.
Yeah, so we got a little bit of time, but we're hustling to get some quotes, so we'll do that. Anyway, it wouldn't go on consent, but I just wanted to get a little background to go with that.
And we're advertising it for various deductibles. Some of our larger equipment, the 200,000 and above priced equipment may have a $25,000 deductible. So we're getting quotes in many different.
On these police cars, what we're carrying, 500,000?
Right now, we're carrying either 500 or 1,000, depending on the type. So we're looking at, on some of the other ones, just like you said, raise the deductible, and we've removed a few of the older cars too.
All right, the next one is under planning. It's a certificate of appropriateness request by Jeremy Murdoch. My understanding is he's got 3 brackets. Is that correct? 3 brackets that he had to go to before the Historic Preservation Commission to get permission under that exterior renovation to do. And they approved it. It was unanimous, I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
Friday,
Last Friday? Okay. I think it's a very minor kind of thing. So unless there's some issues with that anybody knows, I would suggest that would be a consent item as well. Okay. All righty. Claims docket, we understand that is not consent. We have acceptance of the April financials, which normally is not an issue for that. So any issue with accepting the financials under consent? All right. And then we have an open edge card services, which we are taking off the agenda so we can scratch number 3. It'll come back next time around. Under the fire department, we have permission to apply for a firefighter's grant for PPE for the COVID-19 with a 15% match and a filing fee. And that is in addition to the other FEMA money or COVID money that we're getting. And Lisa, did you look at this? Is there a reason that this is better than it falling under the CARES Act or under the COVID-19 Act?
This grant appears to cover equipment that the fire department could use for other reasons other than COVID.
Okay.
The COVID reimbursement is going to be specified equipment just for COVID response. He could purchase equipment out of this that could be used for other functions.
Okay.
He may have bought regardless of COVID.
Okay.
And the $1,200 filing fee is only if the grant is awarded, right?
All right. Any issues with that one? We can go on consent for that. Then we fall down under the police department. We have a justice assistance grant for a match waiver and 100% funding from the state. That's a no-brainer for us. So consent on that item. Sanitation, we have a sole source quote for replacing the engine on the sweeper. This is the oldest sweeper, and we have replaced other parts to it, and all we have left now is an engine, a motor, and it ought to be running for a number of years longer for us. So that would give us 2 sweepers, and we know that in the fall, running 2 sweepers has been incredibly important for us to keep up with the leaves and all the issues associated with that time of year. So
And he has money in his repair and maintenance account.
yes,
Budget line item for that.
yes. So consent for that item. All right, then under utilities, we have 3 items, which is advertising for bids for the sanitary sewer collection system in Green Oaks, areas A and B, which is what Mr. Kemp provided to us. So I would suggest that we have consent for that item. Anybody have any issues or questions about that? Okay. Then we have the advertising for bids for the utilities electric operations center, which also we listened to and is planned for in his budget as well. So I would suggest consent on that item. And then Summit Truck Group for transmission repair work for the electric division for a bucket truck. Is that right? Okay. And so if that's acceptable, consent for that. So that takes us to the end of our agenda. We have pending litigation, potential litigation, which Mr. Latimer will brief us on Tuesday night. And aside from that, I don't know of anything else. Does anyone have anything they wish to discuss or any questions or anything further before we adjourn for the day? All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and we will see everybody on Tuesday.